Number 9, calculate the mean and standard deviation of 10 numbers where this means that the sum of the numbers is 180, and this means that the sum of the numbers squared is 3,356. So from now on, understand that when you see this letter that sort of looks like a weird E, this is a capital Greek letter sigma, and it means sum. Alright, so it means you're adding up a bunch of values. And in this case, we're told that we're adding up 10 values, and it has to equal 180. We don't know what the numbers are, but that's okay. If we add up 10 numbers and get 180, if we divide by 10, that should give us the mean. Okay, so indirectly, they're giving us that the mean is 18. Alright, if you add up all the numbers and divide by how many you have, 180 divided by 10 is 18. So they're giving us that the mean is 18. Okay, so we calculated the mean. Now we just need to somehow from this figure out what the standard deviation is. So for this to make sense, we have to go back and understand how to calculate standard deviation by hand. We've been doing it only on the calculator so far. So let's go back real quick and look at the very first problem, problem number 1. And let's figure out how we could find this standard deviation of 3 by hand. So looking at the black screen, so here's the data. The first thing you need to do to calculate the standard deviation by hand is you need to know what the mean is. Alright, so of course if I wanted to find the mean of these numbers, I will add them up and I will divide by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I will add them up and divide by 6. So let's add these numbers up and see what we get. Alright, so the sum of all these numbers, so I'm calculating the mean. The sum of all these numbers is 108, and now I'm dividing by 6. So of course if I do that, I'm going to get 18. Okay, so that's why the mean is 18. Alright, which is, hold on, which is what we got right here. Now, to find the standard deviation, you have to do two things. So we're finding the standard deviation by hand. The first thing you need to do is find the difference between the data and the mean. Okay, for all of these. So I'm doing 14 minus 18 and 15 minus 18. Alright, so 14 minus 18, that would be -4. And 15 minus 18, that's -3. 18 minus 18 is 0. 20 minus 18 is 2. 23 minus 18 is 5. And again, 18 minus 18 is 0. Alright, so you find all the differences. And then what you do is you square these. Alright, so we're going to take these differences and we're going to square them. So if I do that, I'm going to get 16 and 9 and 0 and 4 and 25 and 0. Now, if I take the average of these, I'm going to get something called the variance. Alright, so the symbol for variance is sigma squared, this lowercase sigma squared. Okay, and that's going to be the sum of these squares, okay, which I'll write this way, divided by however many you have. Alright, so in this case it's going to be the sum of the squares here divided by 6, because that's how many I've got. But in general, I'll call it n for the number of elements that we have. So just focusing on this, so that tells me that the variance is going to equal, now if I add up all these, what do we get? I get 54. And of course, like I said, there are 6 elements, so it'll be 54 divided by 6. That's why the variance is 9. Okay? Now, the standard deviation is going to be the square root of this. And it makes sense because the standard deviation is just sigma, alright? Not squared. So it makes sense that if I want the standard deviation, of course, I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Okay? And then that's going to give me that my standard deviation is 3. Okay? And just taking a quick look back, that's how we got the standard deviation of 3. Now, relating it back to the problem on which we were actually working, they're giving us the sum of the squares. Okay? So remember what we just did. The variance, which is like the standard deviation squared, is equal to the sum of the squares divided by n, where n is how many elements you have. In this case, n is 10, so we know that. So we can do this calculation. We can say the variance is the sum of the squares, divided by how many we have, okay? But we can do this, so because we know that the variance, and they gave us this number, so that's 3,356, and we know that there are 10, okay? So that tells us that the variance, dividing by 10, you just move the decimal point over one time. So we don't need a calculator for that. That's 335.6. Okay? So then the standard deviation is going to be the square root of this, alright? Because the standard deviation is just sigma, not sigma squared. So we will just take the square root of both sides. Okay, so that is going to give us our standard deviation. Will be the square root of 335.6. Okay, so that is 18.3. All right, so that we've been using the calculator, so there may be questions where you have to actually know how to calculate the mean and standard deviation by hand to answer the question. So you're allowed to use the calculator, but that does not let you off the hook. So please make sure that you understand this process. Again, just a quick summary. If you want to find the standard deviation, say here's the data right here. First you find the mean, then you subtract the mean from all the data, and then you square those, and then to get the variance you do the sum, you do the average of these, okay? And whatever you get, that's the standard deviation squared is the average of the squares. So you have to take the square root to get the standard deviation. Alright, and the standard deviation squared is called the variance.